I've been thinking and talking about getting a better welding table for some time now. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a new welding table. Starting with the shop bought table, I do some serious modifications on it to make it better for me. My name is Bob, and welcome to another episode on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. This is the welding table that I've had for many years now. It's a work platform essentially. The surface is 1000 millimeters by 305 millimeters, about 39 inches by 12 inches. It's aluminium, it works out nicely. The height's adjustable. The surface could be bigger, and I usually get around that by laying pieces of straight steel on it to provide a bigger working surface. For many years I've wanted to make a better one. I've got as far as watching a number of YouTube videos on making welding tables, and I've even sketched a few designs. But I've just never got around to making one. You know how it goes, there's always something more pressing to make or interesting to make. Here in Australia, the financial year runs from 1 July to 30 June the following year. And as a consequence, a lot of the retail businesses have what they call an end of financial year sale. Originally it used to be a stock take sale, but these days with computer records, there's no real need for a stock take. But the idea was originally with the stock take sales was that you would run your stock down with your end of financial year sale, so you didn't have so much to count. But they've continued the tradition, and there's a few bargains to be had. End of financial year sales, I'm inundated with machinery and tool catalogues, and I'm sifting through them, and I noticed a few bargains to be had with welding tables. And I thought, I'm never getting around to this, and I'm not getting any younger, I'm just going to buy one. And that's what I did. And what I bought was a bundle. You get the welding table, you get some clamps, get some magnets as well, a bit so-so on the magnets, and you get a little kit of clamps, etc. for attaching to the table. Now the table itself is 1000 millimeters by 750 millimeters. That's about 39 by 29 inches. It's one of these ones with holes, which makes it a fixture table. So basically what it's got is 16 millimeter or 5/8 of an inch diameter holes and a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter grid, or 2 inches by 2 inches. It comes in a flat pack. You have to make it up, and this video is going to be about making it up. The plate itself is 5 millimeters thick. The big thing with welding tables is that they're reasonably flat. They don't have to be machinist flat. It doesn't have to be, you know, a thou here and a thou there. It just needs to be eyeball flat if you like. And so the way they achieve it with a 5 millimeter thick plate, or just under a quarter of an inch thick plate, is they have a grid framework that sits underneath, which is welded on, and that, if you do it properly when you put it together, makes you end up with a flat table, and also a table that's going to remain flat for quite a long time. Over the years I've worked with tables that have just been made with say a half inch, 12 millimeter, 13 millimeter thick steel plate, just essentially built like your kitchen table. And I can tell you, over time you get a bit of a wave. Steel has the habit of creeping or moving, and just the weight of that, and you're working on it, it sort of moves, and you get little dips and whatnot, and it's not so good. This is one that suits my workshop, but you might want a bigger one, and they have bigger ones available. So this video is going to be about putting this one together and a few changes that I'm going to make as I go along putting it together. What comes in the flat pack includes 4 short ribs and 3 long ribs which go together to form the underside of the table. Four caster mounting plates, bolts to hold the leg braces on, 12 assembly straps, four table legs already fitted with levelling feet, two short and 2 long leg braces, and of course the tabletop plate itself. With the tabletop laid upside down on a relatively flat surface, I fit the ribs. The long ribs go on first, with lugs engaging pre-cut slots on the tabletop. I then fit the short ribs, sliding them into slots in the long ribs and at the same time engaging their slot positions on the tabletop. With the ribs in place, I used pairs of bolts with diameters of 10 to 12 millimeters and 3/8 to 1/2 inch that were 75 millimeters or longer to clamp the top plate across the rib intersections to the assembly straps. Whilst the assembly straps are provided with the kit, the bolts are not, and that's something to be aware of. I tighten the bolts only to firmness, just tight enough so that the plate is firmly against the frame, but not tight enough to start crushing in the top plate to the grid. The idea is to have the top plate flat with no depressions caused by the bolts. Then, with the tabletop turned over, I used a builder's level to check the flatness of the tabletop. Checking for flatness, I can see a slight dip on one corner. This was possibly bent in shipping or, shock horror, my assembly. I have my pride, of course, so I will believe the former. Not difficult to fix. I've used some washers as packers along with the force of the clamp bolts to bring it back to the overall surface flatness. There are no printed assembly instructions provided with the kit. Instead, in the box is a leaflet with a QR code which will take you to the Machinery House website where you can download the instructions. The most important bit in the instructions is the welding sequence for joining the weld table to the rib frame. I have used chalk to number this sequence on the tabletop as shown here. I then welded the table out according to the sequence. If you're interested, the electrodes I used were 3mm or 1/8 of an inch E7016. They were run electrode positive and with a DC welder at 125 amps. Not shown here, after I'd welded out the tabletop, I went around with the grinder and ground level any weld that was above the table surface and removed all of the bolts and assembly straps. I am fitting the table with casters, so before fitting the legs, I remove the levelling feet. Caster mounting plates are provided with the kit, but the welds holding the base plates need to be ground down first before they can be fitted to the bottom of the leg. The caster plates are then fitted to the bottom of the legs and welded in place. If you want, you can shorten the table legs by cutting off some of the top half, noting that the bottom half contains the screw mounts for the leg braces. Because I am tall, I've left the legs at their original length. Something to watch out for, however, is the alignment of the caster mounts and the thread inserts on the legs that the leg braces will be bolted to. Non-swivelling casters need their mounts aligned in the direction of travel, and the thread inserts need to be facing out when the leg is fitted to the table. With the legs clamped to the grid frame, I fitted the leg braces. With the leg assembly clamped square and plumb to the tabletop, I'm ready to weld the legs to the grid frame. I welded the legs on using flux core, tacking the corners of each leg first before welding them out. With the legs all welded on, it is time to fit the casters that I bought for the table. The swivel casters rotate on ball bearings, and before standing the table up, I apply a liberal amount of grease to their bearings and races. Here is the completed table, completed as far as the kit goes of course, but not yet suited to my needs. So, stay tuned whilst I add a basket to hold the clamp and fixturing accessories that came as part of the bundle, and then give the table movable extensions to increase the table area for welding jobs longer or wider than the original table dimensions. The table's finished, but we need somewhere to stow this gear. As we went about the build, you may have noticed these screw holes located on each of the posts to the table. Now, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, they market a nice little basket that sits here, and these are the positions to screw the fittings in to hold the basket in place. However, raiding my scrap pile, I came up with a nice basket here, which I think will do the job. And I made up this additional crossbar, which I will fit to the frame, and then locate the basket, ready to hold all the clamps, etc. I'm going to fit the table with movable extensions that can be pulled out to increase the table length, and will fit them with plates that can be offset if needed to widen the table width. I'm using 75mm wide channel for the table plates and have cut 50 by 50 by 5mm square high section, which will form the outer tubes into which 40 by 40 by 3mm square high section sliders will be fitted to form the movable ends. Here I am drilling 13mm diameter holes through which lock bolts will pass to clamp the slider tubes in position. I am fitting two bolts 200mm apart at each end of the outer tube. With the holes drilled, I am welding M12 nuts over the holes. I do this by winding the nuts for the bolts I'm using all the way up, and then positioning the bolt and nut assembly through the hole. The slider tubes are a loose enough fit in the outer tube that their level will change in relation to the top of the table depending on whether the tube is retracted in or fully extended out. I'm fitting these clamp bolts to make sure the level remains constant over the travel distance of each slider. This will ensure that the plates themselves remain on the same plane as the tabletop. Short lengths of 40 by 40 by 3 mm square hollow section are welded onto the sliders to act as risers. An 8 mm thick fish plate is then welded onto the riser to form the mount for the top plate. The top of the riser will then subsequently be drilled and threaded to M8 by 1.25 mm pitch, which will match the threads of the hold-down bolts. The lengths of 75 by 40 mm channel will form the plates that will mount on the sliders to extend the tabletop. Each length is getting 8 mounting holes drilled in it, 4 on each side. These holes are countersunk to fit the heads of the countersunk cap head M8 bolts that I will be using as hold-down bolts for the plates. The 4 inner holes will be used when the plates are in line with the ends of the table, whilst the 4 outer holes will be used to offset the plates to allow objects wider than the table to be fixtured in place. All of my planning, cutting, drilling and welding had been a bit theoretical up till now, and here was the moment of truth. I had to align the outer tubes up so that the top of the plates were level with the top of the table when bolted down, and that it remained level when the slides were extended out. With some fine adjustment, it all worked, and the outer tubes and their supporting cross members could be welded in place. All that remained now was to drill a series of 16 mm diameter holes in the top plates to correspond with the pattern of fixture holes in the table. With each plate in position, I used the centre line of the table as a starting point to mark out and then centre punch the positions of 14 holes along the centre of each plate. These holes would then be in line with the rows of holes in the table itself. The holes were drilled out using a 16 mm annular cutter fitted to the bench mill. Whilst I could have used verniers on the bench mill to position the holes, I found pre-marking and using the locating pin on the annular cutter to locate the position much quicker. I'm very happy with the table and the modifications I've made to it. I really like the extendable ends as they allow me to easily deal with much larger welding jobs now. It does not take much time to move the plates back into the narrow position in line with the table sides and to retract the extension arms. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It was originally 1000 millimeters long by 750 millimeters wide. That's 39 inches long by 29.5 inches wide in imperial measurements. With the extensions resting, if you like, or the extensions in, 1400 millimeters long, which is 55 inches, and still 750 millimeters wide, which is 29.5 inches. When I pull the extensions out for maximum range, it's 1850 millimeters, and that is 73 inches long. So quite good. And then if I offset the two plates, its width is 1050 millimeters or 41 inches wide, and that's big enough, I think, for what I want to do. Anything bigger I'll resort to trestles. So I hope you've enjoyed the build, and if you have, I'd welcome a thumbs up, and by all means share it with whoever you like. It's all good. If you're not already subscribed to the White Dog Garage YouTube channel, well, think about subscribing. It's easy, just hit the subscribe bar down below. While you're there, ding the bell so that you get a notification from YouTube the next time a video airs on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. Thank you once again for watching, and look forward to talking to you next time. Bye.